Do you feel like people often don't reach your expectations?
Do you, in spite of that, still want to go into the next relationship as a whole person? If so, stay tuned for episode 2. Woo! Hi, I'm Josiah.
And I'm Bethany.
And this is One True Pair,
the not-so-common sense guide to godly relationships.
A lot of people go into relationships the exact same way that they came out of the last one, with all the brokenness and hurt attached to it, and they go into their next relationship expecting different results.
According to Einstein, that's the definition of insanity.
Now, we know that you guys are very, very sane individuals, but today we're going to be talking about how, if this is your first relationship, great. We're kind of going to go over that too, kind of how this applies, going into your next relationship as a whole person.
So many people enter their new relationship carrying the baggage from their past relationships and expecting to be made whole in the new relationship. But no other person can make you whole. Which brings us to our first point, which is Jesus. Without Jesus, you can't be a whole person. And I think that's where a lot of people lose sight of this. They enter a relationship expecting the other person to fulfill all of their needs. You're setting up your relationship partner to fail. In reality, God is the only one that can actually fulfill us. And when we put those expectations on someone else, they'll only fail us, and no human being can fulfill those expectations.
Now, expectations aren't a bad thing at all, in the sense of standards. Just, you don't want to settle. It's important to have expectations and standards, but I think if we're trying to fill something in us with something in somebody else, that's not going to work. If you're going into it, though, as a whole person, knowing, I want somebody who really pursues after God, who really is like this or like that or whatever, that's totally fine. Enter into that as somebody without trying to seek fulfillment in another person. Relationships in general, especially Christian dating advice, once your eyes are open to it, you see it everywhere. Everything is so super needs driven. Everything from relationships in dating to relationships, later on in marriage, everything is so super needs driven. How can I get what I need? Ultimately, our needs should be taken care of in Jesus. This relationship should only add to, like the illustration that I sometimes use is like a pair of gloves, especially in wintertime. I think this illustration is really handy. Handy. But if you have a glove, it'll keep your hand warm, right? Like, it's an individual glove. It's not missing any fingers, right? You're complete as a whole person. You don't need anybody to complete you. However, think about how effective that is at keeping both of your hands warm. I mean, you can walk around like this. It's a lot more efficient if you've got a glove for each hand. And I think it's kind of the same way with relationships, is when they're two whole people coming together, I find that it's much more effective. That one's much more effective as a team. And that there are a lot of things that you can do better as a team with a partner that you can't do on your own. Does that mean that on your own you're not complete and that you need somebody else in your life? No, not at all. But it doubles your usefulness. And so I think it's really important to kind of realize that going into relationships, think about it again with the illustration with the gloves. If your glove has a missing finger, you're going to be disappointed if the other glove has all the fingers but doesn't have an extra one for you, right? Like, one of your fingers is still going to be cold. And it's like the same way going into a relationship. If you have places in you that aren't fulfilled, if you have needs that you feel like are going to be met in somebody else that are never meant to be met in somebody else, we need to all have those met in our relationship with Jesus first. So I think that's what's so wrong with these needs-driven relationship, like the perspective of having a relationship that's driven by needs.
In a needs-driven world, how do we understand how to be fulfilled in God first? Well, first and foremost, it's obviously spending intentional time with God. And when you do that at the beginning of your day, start your day and spend time with God and let Him fill you up so that no other person has to. So if you're someone who's been through painful experiences, maybe with relationships or with friendships or in families, and you may not even realize that they're affecting you now and that you can't live your life fully filled up and you have needs, you need to take that to the feet of Jesus and let Him cover that and completely heal all of the past hurts that people may have caused against you, because you can't be a whole person if you're still carrying around these hurts and any kind of brokenness. Brokenness isn't wholeness, and only God can heal broken people.
The last video we talked about, you can check the YouTube card out, top right hand corner, you can see in our last video we actually talked about this more, that depending on what season you're in, maybe you're in a season you feel like I don't seem to be moving forward very much. Maybe it's God like mending a lot of things that are going on inside of you so that you're ready for the next step, so that you go into your next relationship without any baggage or without any of those painful experiences even unintentionally affecting your future relationships.
And maybe you're someone who's like, I don't have any baggage. I've never been hurt by anyone and I'm so ready for a relationship. Well, it's really a cool thing, because maybe you are, and maybe God brings you to the right person, but God can open your eyes to areas in your life that you have let stay piled up with some dirt, and God can clean that out and open your eyes to new things. So my encouragement to you all is to invite God in to do that, to ask Him to search you and to know your heart and to try you and know your anxieties. That's from Psalms for all of my Bible people out there.
And it's not an introspection thing either of like turning inward and being like, oh, like it's not like a witch hunt, like you're trying to find something wrong with you, but rather in spending time with God, let him heal anything that needs to be healed. There's a reason that like during surgery the person's unconscious. Like I feel like sometimes when we don't even realize that God's doing the most healing inside of us. So wherever you are, in spending time with God, God's going to reveal those things to you. If you start to recognize those things, that's also great. But even if you don't recognize it, in spending time with God, realize that God's healing things inside of you and making connections, things that have maybe been broken or otherwise. Maybe it's even just connections that haven't been made in the past.
So maybe you're someone who you're like, no, I spend time with God and I just still feel like I carry these burdens with me, or I have this baggage from previous any kind of hurts or anything that people have caused against you. Just by spending time with God, it allows him to let his love wash over you and his healing wash over you that you might not even realize. So you may think, I haven't been healed of this, and I prayed and my heart's in the right place, but I'm just not getting healed. But by spending time with God and intentionally taking time out of your day to pray, to do what God has called you to do, it allows him to fully pour his truth into you so that you can believe that he made you who he made you to be.
Sometimes I think only looking back does one really realize how far one's come. If you aren't seeing immediate progress or a big difference at the moment, give it some time. And again, back to what we talked about in our last video, enjoy the season that you're in. We interrupt this broadcast now to bring you
the end. So instead of giving you guys one big whale of an episode, we decided to give you two smaller fish.
Like tuna-sized portions. Yeah, we dropped a little bit too much knowledge, I think, is what happened. But we decided to split it up into 2 episodes, so tune in next week for part 2.
Where we give you more practical ways to apply this.
See you next week. Woo!